Hi, and welcome to the weekly predictions based on astrology for the week of August 30th, 2021. In terms of the stock market direction for this week, I think it's going to be a down week, and there's an increasing probability in the second half of the week, pretty much Wednesday through Friday, of a large market drop. And I think that the reversal to up may occur either on Monday of next week, or perhaps it may start as early as Friday afternoon on the 3rd. In terms of the important focus of this week, as I mentioned several other times, it's going to be basically a variety of Neptunian matters, and there may be some concerning news about those. So anything to do with, of course, excessive precipitation, floods, also oil spills, contaminated water, just pollution in general, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, various poisons, and also areas related to, say, religion, music, movies. All of those areas may experience kind of increased news or some events that are related to those areas, but because of the tense aspect from Mars this week, which is a square from Mars to Neptune, it is going to be likely that there will be negative news, concerning news. So Mars will have to do with things like disruptions, attacks, fighting, and in combination with Neptune rather, things that may occur would be increased news about, say, infectious diseases, anything that involves like inflammation or high temperatures. So in combination again with Neptune, it would be perhaps an underwater eruption of some sort, like a volcano, or an area that is like an island may experience some problems where, again, either there's a really bad weather, like we just, of course, experiencing Hurricane Ida this week, but it may be also, again, problems with oil tankers, problems with oil refineries, oil transportation, or transportation of chemicals, delivery of medical care, etc., or say fire at a hospital, or apparently there's a fire at a Lake Tahoe. So unfortunately, anything that already had started even late last week, those areas are not going to get better until the end of this week, because this transit from Mars to Neptune is actually going to get closer and closer, to being precise, and I think would peak right around the 1st of September, I would say, because there will be also a difficult transit from Moon to the Mars and Neptune transit. So I would expect the intensification to peak around the 1st of September. And for the US specifically, this difficult transit also happens to be aspecting Mars and Neptune in US charts. So for the US, these same themes may be even more strongly felt. And of course, as I just mentioned, US has just experienced a landfall of the Category 4 Hurricane Ida in Louisiana, and fires around Lake Tahoe, and of course there was a attack on specifically Navy, not attack on, but rather there was attack in Kabul that killed many Navy personnel there, unfortunately. And so previously, back in April, there was a similar transit, and at that time there were some events. Again, there was like a fire at a hospital, riots in a prison, some attacks near Fort Detrick facility, again by somebody who I believe was either a Navy nurse or something like that. So basically, either individuals from those areas may experience difficulties themselves, or they may be involved in some tense situations, or difficult situations may arise around Neptunian kind of sort of places. So it could be like a movie theater, or again around the body of water, maybe on the ship, near a beach, etc. Let's see. And along the same lines, I think there may be some difficult news for like oil and pharmaceutical industry, and I think specifically the price of oil may reach a reversal point, and I still think it may be a drop right around the 31st through the 3rd of September. And as I mentioned, the 1st of September looks more like this peak sort of time of either increased news or increased concerns about oil, of course also pharmaceuticals, chemicals, etc. Also the same time period, so basically the entire week, may be difficult for Haiti specifically, as again, this difficult transit also happens to make a difficult transit to the chart of Haiti. So I haven't heard any news out of there specifically, but again, if there are problems with, say, I don't know, water contamination or some storm or something, that's might be something to kind of be aware of and to be prepared for. Let's see, for the US, additionally, the whole, pretty much this entire week, may see increased focus on things like relationship with partners, negotiations, agreements, arrangements, and the focus may be on entering into, say, new agreements, making new goals for the future, like discussing some new vision of how things will be. That may be focused on, again, changing relationships with partners, changing sort of the nature of agreements, or changing, again, future goals, and therefore, obviously, that would affect partnerships. And the areas that may be specifically highlighted would be communication, transportation, IT, high tech, airlines, airspace, things of that nature, and there also commerce, so like any trade agreements, for example. And those areas, there may be an announcement that actually affects a great number of people, or is something that is relevant to many. So again, maybe like a trade agreement or a new agreement that governs how people, for example, are allowed to travel, or a new mode of transportation, or a new platform for communication, things like that. Also, this pretty much this starting from, I'd say, last week into the late February of next year, for the US, this whole period is going to be, and especially this week, is going to see increased focus on sort of either tensions or accidents involving, again, specifically Navy or any maritime activities. And there's increased probability, again, not just this week especially, but more or less through end of February, where there may be an increased probability of some problems or confusion or circumstances where there's bad weather, like fog or excessive precipitation, and therefore maybe it's hard to navigate through, again, this fog, for example, or there could be miscommunication with partners, or maybe some device is not, like a radar or something, is not functioning properly, and therefore it's hard to see who is approaching, or there may be increased focus, kind of a heightened, I guess, awareness of some unseen threat, whether it's spying, hacking, some biomedical threat, or even threat through, again, some unseen ways, because they're either too small to detect, or because maybe, again, there is no threat and it's really imaginary, or because the communication is unclear, or there's just some confusion, and basically there may be this high state of alert, and then especially involving, again, Navy or sort of ships, or any activities related to like water, oil, chemicals, and there might be either some problems, but they may be either undetected, like an undetected leak, for example, that might not be discovered until, some months later, or there may be this increased sense of kind of a alert, or a problem, but for example, like some hacking or something is occurring, but the actual source of where it's coming from is not clear, or it's hard to detect the real, enemy. So that is something that will be a strong theme for US both this week, but also throughout, say, the end of February of next year. For China specifically, the 29th was an important date. So I think there may be something also felt perhaps for Monday as well. And that would be focused on some financial policies, rates, currency value, investments, and perhaps changes in some rules regarding either taxes or some tariffs. And there may be some decision to revert back to an old agreement, or to an old rule, or to an old, I guess, I don't know, rate. So there may be some announcements, either more likely on Monday of this week for China, that may affect investors, and again are related to either some financial policies for China, or some trade agreements, or currency value, something along those lines. And those announcements may be seen as unfavorable perhaps due to some confusion because some details may be unclear, or the reason for those announcements may be unclear. And so therefore they're seen kind of unfavorably because it's just confusing what they actually are. Let's see, I mentioned that for Tuesday through Friday, market will continue going down. And as I mentioned also, that's when, like, middle of the week is when transit between Mars and Neptune is going to be felt the most intensely. And what's interesting to note is that during, of course, this is the 16th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, where it hit also Louisiana coast, also as a Category 4 storm, and of course it had devastating effects. And now in like New Orleans, about 1 million people are without power. There is widespread catastrophic damage from a strong storm Ida. And as I mentioned in the comment from the previous video, Katrina actually was also, or rather also happened under the Mars square Neptune transit. So in general, those kind of transits happen to coincide with some problems related to Neptunian activities, which of course a hurricane or floods are a prime example of Neptunian domain. However, since for Ida, this particular Mars square Neptune also happens to be negatively aspecting US natal chart, I believe that, even though we haven't seen it maybe so far, but actual devastating effect of Ida may actually be worse even than Katrina, even though of course in Katrina levees gave way and I think there were really like 1,800 people died, so likely this didn't seem to have happened this time. But indeed there major power outage, which of course would affect whether or not the water can be pumped properly, availability of, again, clean water, or ability to pump sewage and things like that. And that is, again, the types of, unfortunately, events that, again, may occur under Mars square Neptune. And this, unfortunately, is going to still intensify into middle to end of this week. So fingers crossed it will not, necessarily get much worse, but there's definitely, when everything is sort of said and done, there may be a possibility that Ida actually may be even more, have a more catastrophic impact overall in terms of perhaps financial losses than even Katrina was. Let's see. And globally, again, this week, there may be some disagreements about things related to Neptune, or some tensions or upsets or arguments. And of course there is this OPEC plus meeting, I believe on Wednesday, where they will be discussing oil production. However, again, any of these areas, like say pharmaceuticals, delivery of clean water, medical supplies, but also oil, gas prices, etc., all of those areas may be a topic of, again, increased but heated discussions and arguments. So if there's an agreement to be reached, it'll be actually harder to reach such an agreement at this time, and it's more likely that partners will argue and kind of not agree on whatever their expected outcome is going to be. Let's see. For the US also, Thursday the 2nd of September is going to see an important transit that may bring increased focus on leadership, status in the world arena, and also clarification of some sort related to either financial policies, USD value, rates, debt, loans. So some additional kind of executive decision may be made there, or some leadership announcements that is going to have impact on those areas may be made in the US on Thursday. Let's see. And Friday, as I mentioned, is going to be when we may start seeing a reversal to up, perhaps on Friday afternoon. And if not, then it's probably going to happen on following Monday, where there may be a jump back, reversal to up by the stock market. So what's ahead in terms of this year and then for the next couple of years, both globally and for the US? In some, I think September looks overall kind of more down than up, if you look at all of the days, I guess, of course, there'll be some up days and some down days, but particularly more tense days of this week is going to be September 1st through 3rd, and then the 20th. And there will be basically a mixture of good and bad days, but I wouldn't say that September overall is going to be necessarily the worst month, aside from the very beginning of the month when we're experiencing, of course, variety of problems like hurricanes, etc. And then later in the year, another noteworthy period to point out is middle of December, where there might be several important announcements happening both in the US and globally. In the US, there may be some new developments related to either USD value, financial institutions, financial policies, rates, etc. And there also may be some announcements that will specifically affect the value of gold and silver. And I think at that time, around the 15th of December, value of gold and possibly also silver may go up and perhaps even peak for the year. Let's see. And then also right around, again, the 15th of December globally, we're going to experience yet again Mars difficult transit to moon nodes, which yet again, and also we'll have the ongoing sort of slowly developing transits between Uranus and Saturn, which is a square. It's going to become more precise right in the middle of December. So at the same time, there may be increased probability of either again structural sort of problems, like when we had maybe not as bad, or it could be something similar when back in February we had the situation where in India there was this sort of like a ice slide, I'm not sure, or ice avalanche, I don't know, basically something where you have something at the top, something that's made out of rock or ice, or it's cold, or is really again at some height, and there was some structural damage. In this case, there was a dam was breached by this rock slide, ice rock slide. And then we had earlier this summer an unfortunate incident in Florida, where there's a condo had basically collapsed. Again, something that is really tall, and it's a structure made out of like metal, rocks, etc. came crashing down, killing many people. And so in December, mid-December, there's going to be again time where something along similar lines may occur. And again, it might be like something that brings a structural damage, and it could be literally a building, or it could be like something in the mountain, like a rock slide, or it could be even something where you have a top or a leader of, say, a large corporation, or even a governmental leader, somebody who is an established or older leader, and they again may come, their like career or reputation may come tumbling down in a similar manner. But I think more likely it will be that it's some sort of either crash, as in like a vehicle, but again, something that occurs either at a certain height, maybe like on a tall bridge, for example, or something that tumbles down literally because there's some structural problem with that. So that's in mid-December. And then specifically at that time, I looked at, I guess, previous occurrences, and it seems that, and I don't know exactly where in the world it might happen, but it seems that specifically Haiti and may be potentially affected, like there are some difficult transits for Haiti at that time, mid-December specifically. And other areas, maybe like Turkey and Taiwan, perhaps. So that's those are some of the areas that perhaps may be affected some more. Again, I'm not as sure of it, but that's just potential areas to look at mid-December. Then looking further into next year, basically starting right around December 29th and into like spring, summer of next year, there will be a major kind of a change where Jupiter will be moving into Pisces and then conjuncting Neptune right around early April, which of course Neptune rules Pisces. So there's a greater probability of either strong floods or strong developments related to, again, Neptunian matters, which could be related to oil, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, but also movies, music, any religious sort of themes, or anything to do with sort of spirituality. But it could be either this really beautiful, I guess, sense of people kind of awakening to their own spirituality and kind of wanting to do things that are more spiritual or enlightening to them. I don't know, get into yoga, for example, or meditation, I don't know. And those areas may experience kind of a boom in terms of more people may start buying, I don't know, crystals or something like that. Or at the same time, of course, if things are pushed too far and the person doesn't have very good control, I guess, over their sort of mental state, it may also be associated with things where, like addictions, so too many drugs or something. Maybe there are problems with drug addictions, or perhaps it's due to lockdowns, people's mental health may not be as good, or just generally speaking, there's like a pervasive fear of something. And I mentioned one of the previous weekly predictions that I forget already in which year, but like some Middle Ages, there was a really kind of a big prediction about really major floods under similar transit, and actually floods didn't materialize, but there was this widespread panic in the anticipation of floods actually happening, where people are building literally like an ark to escape, stockpiling food or something to prepare for those crazy floods, which floods didn't come, but people's mental state was such that indeed there was this widespread panic in the anticipation of some big disaster. So either way, whether people are perhaps might be panicking or feeling, that they're in some difficult state mentally due to actual disaster, or because they're just afraid of something that's like a windmill and is not there, either way, it's going to be the time where some people, again, just will feel really kind of uplifted and they feel very inspired. Perhaps they'll start doing something artistic or, compose music, I don't know, something that allows them to find outlet for their creative activity. And those areas, again, maybe music instruments or apps that say produce music, or a lot of people produce music themselves, or like I said, new age kind of activities may become really popular and profitable. Similarly, pharmaceutical companies may make a lot of money, and also oil prices may go up. And so again, those companies may make a lot of money. Again, that's January into, I'd say, May of 2022. At the same time, again, people who are perhaps not as well balanced, they may be more prone into getting addicted to something, or there may be just a lot of confusion, and sort of emotionally there may be more instability in people's lives just because there's some sense of uncertainty, if not panic about something, like maybe anticipating some large, flood or some big weather event that perhaps doesn't even occur, but whether it occurs or not, people may still feel on the edge emotionally. So that's kind of a global feel for that, and especially the dates around, like I said, early April 4th, may see either increased floods or indeed focus on, say, oil spills or contamination, or maybe there's like a maritime accident or something like that along those lines. There may also be like a gas or oil leak, or just too many kind of say oil tankers accumulating somewhere, and maybe because of bad weather or some problems with being able to dock, they can't really reach the port. So something along lines where there's just too much oil, maybe in one area, and it's kind of imbalanced, but it's not able to kind of be channeled properly. It's just things are kind of spilling out of control. So definitely something to keep an eye on. Another area, of course, that could be affected is spread of some sort of flu-like disease, or anything that's an infectious disease, that perhaps like cholera, that's something that spreads through like contaminated water, for example. And so there's an increased probability of all of that, again, basically the first half of next year, but especially around early April. Then next year around August 1st, plus minus a few days, there's definitely also strong probability of either a really bad weather event. Of course, we're getting again to this hurricane season at that time, but also it could be like an industrial disaster, or maybe an airline or airplane crash, or something that's like flying. Again, a tornado, of course, hurricane, you have strong winds, but also it could be related to like an electricity, maybe power losses, or engine not functioning properly, starting a fire, explosion. excessive speed. Again, it could be like a hurricane, of course, in the US right around the same time, but it could be also a plane crash, or it could be multiple similar occurrences in multiple parts of the world, but again, involving excessive speed, excessive winds, and some failure of some engine where electricity is not being provided, or again, of course, widespread power losses as well. At the same time, there may also be some increased news around, again, August 1st, 2022, related to cryptocurrencies, banks, and anything that's basically digital transactions or online, banking, any financial apps that allow people to send money, again, online through the internet, any things like digital and money related. And there again, there may be some fluctuations in value, problems with services suddenly disappearing, problems with bank or financial institution basically being somehow unstable, or loss again of power temporarily, where people either can't access something, or literally like facility where maybe some company resides catches fire, or is experiencing some difficulty, or maybe some production is halted because, again, either it could be due to weather or due to power outages, but either way, right around August 1st, there might be some serious problems from just disaster to service disruptions or accidents. And for summer also, for China also next summer, and especially July, August of 2022 may see increased precipitation, so there is increased probability of serious flooding, and also associated financial losses, meaning losses due to floods. Later on in the year of 2022, from about mid-September through the end of October, and especially around October 11th, yet again, we will experience this final sort of more close square between Saturn and Uranus. And at that time, we will also have, yet again, Mars. This time it will be conjunct with Moon, and Mars will again square Neptune, and that will be right around, like I said, October 11th. So from about October 7th through the 15th of 2022, there may be, again, a difficult time where there may be increased problems with, again, precipitation, maritime accidents, chemical spills, problems with oil, maybe anger or arguments over oil prices, or gas leaks, chemical accidents, some flare-up of some infectious disease, concerns about some pharmaceuticals and things of that nature, and also increased probability of a large market drop, and that's again for about October 8th through the 14th of 2022. And then also for, yet again, for both US, China, Turkey, early November of 2022, so I'd say November 1st through the 11th, maybe significant time, especially around November 8th of 2022, which I believe is going to be also the time of the midterm elections. For the US, is going to be, but globally as well, this is the date where we will have a total lunar eclipse with some really strong, difficult transits. So for all the countries globally, but also for US, China, and Turkey, perhaps there may be some increased probability of some difficult situations from like an industrial accident, maybe a large earthquake, or some really big, some difficult maybe protests, or, airplane crash, or something that occurs suddenly and involves or affects large number of people, or large number of people can become aware of it because, say, it's in the news everywhere. And it also may be, again, something that involves, because again, the moon presence this time and lunar nodes, that there may be some excessive emotional response to the activities at that time, because again, many people are aware of it, many people are either aghast or freaked out or just emotionally involved somehow. And because of Uranus, again, things either may happen quickly and suddenly, like an earthquake, obviously, without much warning, but at the same time, it may also be that the reactions, emotional reactions, are unpredictable and go up and down, because Uranus has this sort of a nature of things kind of occurring with this rapid, up and down kind of fluctuation. So basically, both time where there may be some actual event happening, like I said, a large earthquake or an industrial accident, but also where people's emotions may be somehow unstable and people may be overreacting to things sort of excessively, whether because, again, there's a reason for them to react to something, or just because, again, so a total lunar eclipse and Uranus on the node of the moon is going to be, again, something that may really trigger a lot of negative or difficult emotions, will be hard to process emotionally for many people. And again, it may affect, among other things, also specifically financial institutions, cryptocurrencies, banks, financial policies, loans, rate, debt, USD value, those kind of areas as well. And then when we look at even a little bit beyond that, so there's 22 through 23, 2022, 2023, these will be significant years, specifically for the US, of course globally as well, but for the US, as I mentioned before, the country is going to be going through this Pluto return, where Pluto comes back to the natal position in the US chart. So that would signify a lot of structural changes in how things are functioning, how things are governed, also financial institutions, because Pluto in the US chart is in the second house of banks, and it also happens to be in Capricorn, which has to do with literally structures, maybe indeed rebuilding infrastructure, for example, would be a good thing, I guess, to do under this transit, and because you can more easily to kind of demolish the old and really rebuild things from scratch. That, again, Capricorn is a very sign that really likes things to be stable and practical and kind of stand for a long time. So if indeed there's a good effort made to kind of rebuild, say, things from scratch, like an old bridge, it actually is a good time for such activities. At the same time, things that are maybe useless or outlived or kind of crumbling, at this time, they are more likely to be just let go of. So any sort of, toppling of the statues, or maybe some important CEO of some corporation that, was standing there and kind of being upheld for a long time. Suddenly this thing may kind of crash down and be completely revamped, from scratch. So there are definitely some major changes in that perspective, but also at the same time, 22, 23, and throughout, say, about February of 2024 for the US, there will be important transit of Neptune also happening, which it will be opposing US Neptune, squaring US Mars, and then Neptune will also enter into the fourth house in the US chart. So that definitely would coincide with some changes, major changes, but confusing changes, maybe difficult changes because of some uncertainty for areas related to, of course, Neptune, which would be Navy, any sort of marine, fishing, underwater exploration, also, of course, oil industry, chemicals, pharmaceuticals. All those industries may undergo some changes, but those changes may occur through some difficult transitions. And again, there may be a lot of confusion, so things may not be very clear as far as what is the direction. And there may be some accidents and problems kind of along the way. And also Neptune, of course, signifies specifically flooding, and fourth house has to do with land, homeland, agriculture, farming, real estate. So there might be problems with literally too much flooding. And that, again, between now and even through February of 2024, but especially felt strongly 22, 23, where again the US may experience literally either just excessive flooding that may unfortunately contaminate maybe some farmlands and affect agriculture and price of food, for example. But also it may affect the value of real estate. There may be some problems with real estate, quote unquote, underwater, where people can't afford to pay for it, or they may not afford where they live, again, and just too much, also perhaps either concerns about pollution. Again, this could be due to flooding, for example, or due to perhaps some bad agricultural practices, spills of either oil or some chemical that can contaminate either water or land, or just generally dealing with things like, vermin infestation, for example. And again, the problems also will be that it'll be, with Neptune, it's very hard to pinpoint the origin of the problem and the solution, because it's just, again, it's hard to see and hard to detect what is the, the actual value that, maybe of chemical or something, or how should something be solved, because Neptune is not going to be very clear sort of about offering the specific solution or pinpointing the origin of the problem. So this kind of general sense of instability, and again, this could also involve for banks, how stable is this bank versus another bank, because again, the value of those banks' assets may be unclear, and this could be unclear because, again, there may be some changes in the value of, as I mentioned, Pluto at the same time is going to be going through Pluto return, and Pluto in the US chart is in the second house, again, of banks and earnings. So the value of some banks' assets may be unclear, while at the same time there may be some financial policy changes that affect banks' dollar value and currency. And so there just may be a lot of kind of changes, not just in general in, say, governance, but also in financial sphere. And because of the difficult transits and the fact that they're happening at the same time, the changes may be somewhat more difficult. Basically 22, 23 in that sense look a little bit more difficult for the US specifically. Obviously, there's potential for people kind of changing indeed what their values are, and Neptune offers kind of a greater focus on things that are spiritual, because perhaps material things may not be going so well, that people may be a little bit more likely to seek kind of inspiration and more kind of in religion, or not necessarily religion, but in the more spiritual realm. So in that sense, people may find more what they truly value, what they truly are inspired by, as opposed to focusing on just, the actual like financial values. And in terms of weather, and that's kind of a global thing, in 2023, there are also multiple periods where there may be some difficult times where, again, there may be some either accidents or events that are not necessarily accidents, but specifically we will have difficult transits between Pluto and moon nodes. And Pluto usually, again, triggers things like earthquakes, or even like coup d'etat, or some change in like Chile, where they overthrown the government, I think installed like Augusto Pinochet. So things like that, where there are a lot of either protests, but also could be like a terrorist attack, or just protests because there are a lot of some, like anti-governmental protests, for example, or anti-some organization protests, because again, Pluto just has to do with power, and people may say protest against certain kind of power plants, for example. And at the same time, there may be some, unfortunately, strong probability, and that I'll just mention specific dates in 2023 where this applies, but on and off in 2023, there's going to be this probability of either increased focus on nuclear power for, better or worse, and increased probability of some either accidents or near accidents. So in the past, things would be that happened under similar transits would be this increase in, say, nuclear bomb testing back in, I think, 70s, when, this country and that country would explode things and contaminate the environment, or where there would be near accident with some, like, missile was kind of accidentally almost dropped during, like, one, I guess, being loaded from a ship onto the submarine or something like that. So things of that nature, where there may be some concerns, perhaps due to weather issues, or just some crew being sloppy, or just, again, things happen, but there might be specifically triggering concerns about either power plants in general, or especially nuclear power plants, or nuclear weapons. Again, this could be due to there just being, say, a flood, and the power plant loses ability to maybe cool itself or something like that, temporary. Or it could be concerns about, again, pollution, and so therefore there may be protests against certain type of power plants to kind of, promote clean energy, for example. And let's see, so I guess the worst times in 2023 where we may have this kind of effect is summer and fall of 2023, and particularly July, August of 2023, and then October, November of 2023. And within those times, I would note July 31st, August 13th, August 21st, October 4th, and November 11th, again, of 2023. And so there may be increased either maybe storms or earthquakes or some, again, natural disasters. At the same time, more protests, or even, like I said, even some military clashes or even coups where old power is replaced with new power, but violently. And there also may be increased focus and problems related to facilities that are of Plutonian nature, meaning anything that's underground. So maybe underground or associated with power, like police, for example, or spying sort of agencies, or anything that's secret or underground, literally because, say, it's a mine, or it's something that's buried, underground storage, or maybe storage of old nuclear, like used up nuclear, maybe fuel, for example, or storage of actual like weapons or something that have very destructive nature to them. And so the problems at the time, again, especially July, August of 23, and then October, November of 23, may be related to, say, there's an earthquake and some underground mine or storage facility collapses, but there may be some stuff stored there that perhaps is like used up nuclear fuel or something that is very poisonous and toxic, and that natural disaster may trigger a need to go and excavate whatever that maybe have been accidentally buried and excavated and reburied somewhere else more safely. Or again, there could be news throughout the world at that time where, again, old leadership is basically ousted, especially those who are like dictators or ruled by power, for example. Those kind of leaders may be more likely to basically be given the boot in 2023. However, it doesn't mean that whoever comes to power is necessarily going to be suddenly, universally liked. It could be just, again, a coup, but the new person may not be any better than the old person, because, again, under these sort of transits, it's more likely that, again, just one power supersedes the other power, but at that exact same time, it may not necessarily be better or worse. Half the people may love the new whatever change, and half may dislike it. I guess there's no way to please everybody at all times. But regardless, that the changes may be quite substantial, and that's globally. And again, for the US specifically, 22, 23 may be significant years for just changes overall, and especially related to financial system, governmental structures, and anything to do with like homeland, agriculture, farming, and real estate. So that is it for me for today. I hope you're having a good week, despite the week maybe being somewhat more difficult in terms of transits, and hopefully next week is going to be a better one. Until then, stay safe, and I'll catch you guys next time. Bye!